Box 5 and Hot 97 present Street Soldiers with Lisa Evers.
I'm so glad you're joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on New York City crime. I'm your host, Lisa Evers. You know, many New Yorkers are worried about rising crime rates and deteriorating quality of life conditions. Now the question is whether a new mayor can make a change for the better. Members of the YPF gang allegedly made social media rap videos like these to recruit members, flaunting some of the 20 very real guns later confiscated by police. The recent takedown of 17 members for 3 murders and more than a dozen shootings resulted from a new investigative approach by Kings County DA Eric Gonzalez and the NYPD. The suspects, some in their early teens, were pre-indicted by grand juries before their arrests. The NYPD calls it precision policing, where they go after the most violent offenders who terrorize communities.
It wasn't only the actual violence, but it was the perception of violence. You decimate a community's ability to believe in being safe when you have violence of this magnitude.
From 2019 to the end of 2021, shooting incidents more than doubled in the city, according to the NYPD's own statistics. Mayor Adams says stopping the bullets from flying must be a coordinated effort between various government agencies and community groups.
I would advise him to work with the community partners to address issues, not just dealing with crime, but with the various other problems that help contribute to that.
Adams has proposed bringing back plainclothes street crime officers with body cameras to get guns off the street, an idea that's raised some civil rights questions. But he will have public support if he continues his hands-on approach, says political consultant Michael Oliva.
When it comes to crime, that's A, and I'm going to be constantly engaged with the community, constantly engaged with the press. I'm going to be engaged with the leaders. I'm going to be engaged with just normal, everyday citizens and voters.
Cure violence community organizations like Harlem Street Corner Resources are on the front lines, a point of view the mayor should see for himself, says founder IESHA SEKOU.
I welcome Mayor Adams to come and talk with me and with Street Corner Resources, look at the work that we've done, look at the work that we continue to do, and also evaluate where we are and where other organizations really are.
There's many layers to this issue. Let's find out what our panel has to say. Joining me is Michael Oliva. He's the president of Sykes Global Communications, as well as a political consultant. Michael, great to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Also joining us is Keith Taylor. He's a professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice and a former NYPD supervisor. Keith, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And also joining us is IESHA SEKOU. She's the CEO and founder of Street Corner Resources and a Harlem anti-violence activist. For many years, IESHA, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. I appreciate it.
Michael, I want to start with you on this. Mayor Adams campaigned on this theme of safety and justice. How realistic was that?
Well, I mean, I think that, he's still in sort of the honeymoon phase here. And you have, with Omicron, it's not very romantic honeymoon, but, and he's dealing with a lot of moving parts. I mean, I see the way he really was very kind to DA Alvin Bragg in Manhattan when he just introduced his reforms. There were both sides. There's Tom Suozzi, who's on one side of the safety debate with bail reform. You have some of the activists who are on the other side. And he's trying to speak to both sides of that debate as well. And, there are very different perspectives on what these numbers mean when you talk about the numbers from the first year of bail reform. But you have to remember something, when Eric Adams came up before he was in the state Senate, not only was he a police officer, but he used to run around with Norman Siegel, and he did a lot of work on sort of police brutality, on fairness, for Black men and women in the police department. So he's really seen this issue from both sides. And I think that that's an advantage for him going into neighborhoods. Also, being a Black man himself, and knowing that people in those communities don't necessarily align with the 5% of people on Twitter who are yelling the loudest. And, a lot of them are clamoring for safety right now. And he's saying exactly what they want to hear. So I think he has a lot of tools in his toolbox moving forward. Let's just see if he can put the pieces together and try to make everybody happy.
Aisha, in terms of from your standpoint, because you work with police officers at times, but you're also critical of the department when you feel they're not responsive to the needs of the community. What do you think it is about Eric Adams' background that might make things different in terms of the streets becoming safer?
Well, I'm concerned about one or two things. One, I want to say congratulations to him and to welcome him as mayor in this great city, which we know requires a great deal of responsibility. So I think that his background gives him insight. I think that he has been somewhat, though, removed from direct policing. And I think that his agenda, I've been reading over some of his safety plan. And I have to say that I did have a conversation with him before he became mayor. But what I see is that it's pretty aggressive. And I think that bringing back impact cops on the street without new training may not be a good idea. How do you bring the ones who caused the problem in the past back to do the job and expect that it's going to be different without a time period for proper training? Not a slap on the wrist, not a talking to, not an expectation, but training how to do that job of being on the street and not wearing a uniform, but out of uniform. How do you keep those cops from turning rogue? He
And we're
himself
going
knows
to talk, and we're going to get into
cop.
And we're going to get into some of those specific proposals of him coming up in the show. But Keith, let me get your first, opinion on this, because Mayor Adams, he's bringing this actual policing experience. I mean, he's been with us on Street Soldiers going back to the late 1990s, when he was definitely not Mr. Popularity within the department. He faced a lot of challenges just coming up through the ranks, but he was reaching out to the community on his own time, telling people, how do you behave when you're stopped by police? Because there were so many people getting caught up in these stop and frisk things. What do you think it is about his background that may bring a new perspective to the mayor?
Well, I think that with his background, he's going to be able to hit the ground running, because he's not going to have to understand this monstrosity of a police department and its culture. Additionally, he, I think, is showing symbolically and in real terms with his appointment of Commissioner Sewell as the first woman and first African-American woman and first woman to
Period,
be,
right.
Which I think really sets the stage, sets the tone for his intolerance for inappropriate behavior, both within the department as well as policing our communities. And I believe there is going to be an emphasis on making certain that policing in poor communities, in Black and brown communities, with dealing with immigrants, that those are going to be dealt with in a very handling those communities with care. I think that's going to be the goal.
There's much more to come. Stay with us. Michael, politically, just from your wearing your political consultant hat, when Mayor Adams first said, we're bringing back the anti-crime cops, these precinct-based plainclothes units that were notorious or involved in some of the most controversial police shootings of the last 20 years, notorious for not having their badges out when they rolled out of the unmarked cars with the license plates, bent over halfway so you couldn't see what they are, or no license plates at all. He took a lot of criticism for that, but he said, no, they have to come back. What about that from a political risky standpoint?
Well, I'm going to insert my own feelings here a little bit. I mean, I don't like these units because I think they're very intimidating. A lot of times there are kids around. They don't know what's happening. These guys come out of nowhere. They look like a gang. They're not sure, and it sets up a false narrative here, which is, I think, that like tax-paying citizens in certain communities have to choose between either safety and civil rights, and that shouldn't have to be a choice. You should be able to have both.
That's right.
We talk about community policing, which is presence on the street, living in the community, knowing the people that you're policing, just as a teacher would live in a community and know who the teacher was teaching. These to me are more effective ways, and I feel like that you can still be tough on crime, but I think there's going to be a lot of pushback with this stuff, and I'm not really sure it's the right solution, both logistically or politically.
Okay, but realistically, I mean, we're looking at rising crime, especially compared going back to 2019, a lot of changes in the laws that affect how police officers operate. Keith Taylor, as a former NYPD supervisor with your experience there on the streets, Adam says this is not going to be the same anti-crime units from the past because, number one, they're going to be wearing body cameras that must be functioning. What do you say to that?
I think that technology is really going to help with accountability, body cams being one thing. Also, the disciplinary process of the police department has changed significantly. So the types of inappropriate actions that may have been taken in the past are going to be dealt with in a different way. Additionally, you have the law enforcement partners, the Manhattan DA's office, the other DAs, that are going to be looking, to process violent criminals and violent crime specifically, and not be as interested in the lesser crimes that consume the very finite resources that these agencies have.
IESHA, what about bringing back a 2022 version of these anti-crime units? You've talked a lot about you operate in some of the most violent precincts in the city where the shootings are happening, where innocent people are getting caught in the crossfire, where kids can easily get guns. What do you say to that? I mean, is it enough measures?
Lisa, I've always used my voice to stand up against policing that is not policy. And so we've seen these tactical teams jump out on people, bang people's head on the ground, oftentimes have the wrong people, only to just kind of pat them up and say, oh, sorry that we treated you so bad. So rising crime is not justification to take away people's civil rights in their community, to mistreat them, to violate them. And of course, to violate them in front of young children and our elders. It causes trauma in our community that is directly related to the way that the police respond. So I would recommend to our Mayor Adams that he first make sure that these police are properly trained. You can't put the same police who acted in a negative behavior, violating people's rights, you can't put them back in the street and maybe they had a 3 or 4 year respite where they weren't in the street, however long it's been. But to go back in, you go back in with the same mindset, the same behavior, and the same actions, because those were justified because there was high crime. We have to expect from the police to act within police policy, that we have some of the best intel in the country to find out where the guns are, who are supplying them, how they're coming in, who's committing crimes. We don't have to have police officers act as rogues, as gangs in our streets and terrify our community on the other end. Neither is a solution. Having gang members terrify the community or having police terrify under the justification of high crime. Both are wrong, both traumatize our community, and it does not make our community better. So I'm expecting that Mayor Adams do more to train these officers for proper behavior, to respect our community, no matter what's going on, that the intel has to be used properly and, of course, with respect.
Keith, Mayor Adams is talking about that a lot of the young, there's a certain profile of the people that get involved in gang activity. They're most overwhelmingly male, overwhelmingly young, and he said Black, brown, and or poor. And he said that these are conditions that they're coming from traumatic households, they're coming from a lot of unstable family situations. They may have learning disabilities. How real are those social factors in terms of basically the resume of a potential criminal?
They're quite real. And what is most disturbing is that policies and policymakers don't necessarily acknowledge the societal issues that go into this development of those conditions, the poverty, the concentration of it, the focus of not just drug use and drug dealing, but drug treatment centers that are unpopular in other areas. There's no connection to the past, things like redlining and how they help develop communities and resulting in these continual problems occurring, the concentration of these problems where people of color who are impoverished exist. So it should not be a surprise that young people growing up in this environment are traumatized and don't have access to many things that are needed for them to have healthy lifestyle outcomes.
Michael, in terms of these issues, again, coming back to the politics of it and these issues, Mary Adams talks about in New York City, sadly, we have over 100,000 children who are homeless, and who knows how many more tens of thousands are unstably housed. He talks about that as one of the issues. When you start to talk about social issues, these are not things that are going to turn up, show changes in month-to-month crime statistic reports. What do you think? How risky is that for him to take on these issues this early on?
Well, it's interesting. Her name's escaping me, but there is a woman in San Francisco who just wrote one of these like Substack pieces where she talked about, all of our elected officials are Democrats. They're very progressive, and there's crime, there's homelessness everywhere, and I think that people on sort of like, you could call New York City the Democratic side of the equation, have to sort of explore what's working and what's not, and what may work in different times better. I mean, because I think on one end, and what Mr. Taylor was talking about, is that there needs to be a holistic approach as far as community involvement, people being brought up in a better environment, outreach, everything that Ms. SEKOU is doing as well. But there also has to be law enforcement, right? It's not one or the other. You don't solve it on the front end, you don't solve it on the back end, you solve it on both ends. And I think as long as he's consistent, Mayor Adams, on that message, and as long as, constant involvement with the community, open dialogue, between crime and COVID right now, you're not reading about much else. And
no, exactly. I mean, those are the huge issues.
And I think he'll be given a little bit of leeway as long as the engagement is there. And by the way, you have to deal with the police officers too. I mean, a lot of them they're working people too, right? They're diverse as well. A lot of them do live in the city.
Right. It's much more diverse than in the past. That's an old
right. So he's going to have to work very hard and talk to everybody involved.
You should talk with us about the trauma. We brought up the word. I think Keith brought up the word trauma, but there's trauma in the community when there's shootings. When there's a drunk driving accident of a teenager in an affluent suburb, there's counseling. The school shuts down. There's counseling that's brought in, and yet we have so many children here in New York City. There's these shootings, especially the last 2 years, have been in broad daylight and
unaddressed.
Right.
The trauma that comes from not just the shooting that the young person may have just witnessed in 2021 or 2022, because we've had a few already, but from the shootings they have witnessed over years, connected to their family, neighbors, the person who lives downstairs, the cousin, the uncle, the one they hear about in the hallway when they're in the hallway as well. I think that we have to look at the crisis management system. I think we have one of the best cure violence systems in New York City, and we are still creating it even better and stronger, that we do have counselors, but we need more. We need to make sure that every single public school has at least 2 counselors. This work can become overburdening very quickly. We have a hospital responder program at Street Corner Resources where we respond to one of the best trauma centers in the country at Harlem Hospital, but we see a lot of shootings and stabbings. We need more responders responding to different hospitals, and we need to create our trauma units even better and stronger to not just provide counseling for those who are credible messengers and hospital responders, but provide counseling for those who work in that hospital that see shooting and stabbing and shooting and stabbing, and they can't find the parents of the young person. There's a whole host of drop-down issues that happen when someone is shot, killed, stabbed, or brutally beaten that the community does not see, that Street Corner Resources team responds to. We need more response in the hospital and more support.
But I want to thank all of you for being with us for this episode of Street Soldiers. Michael Oliva, great to have you with us again. Thank you so much. Keith Taylor, great to have you. Thank you for joining us. And IESHA SEKOU, thank you so much for always being a voice for the community and joining us once again. We appreciate it. And thank you for joining me for this episode of Street Soldiers. I'm Lisa Evers. Remember, use your mind. It's your best weapon. I hope it's your only weapon. Let's push for peace, love, and justice for all.